Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. If you enjoy the content, please help support the channel by liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. Your support really helps the channel grow and reach more people. Thanks for being here. Let's get started. Jesus, the divine spark, and the religion that came after him. Jesus is the most famous man who has ever lived. Around 2 billion people, roughly a quarter of the human race, worship him. His name has shaped civilizations, empires, laws, morality, art, politics, war, peace, and the spiritual lives of countless human beings. But who was Jesus? What did he believe? And why did one man living in the Roman world become the center of the largest religion on earth? To begin, two different figures must be separated: the historical Jesus and the biblical Jesus. They are not necessarily the same. The historical Jesus was a real man who lived in the 1st century. He was born around 4 BCE and was associated with Galilee, a region connected to Judea and situated within the Roman Empire. Galilee stood at a meeting point of cultures, religions, languages, and beliefs. It was connected to many of the major intellectual and religious currents of the ancient world, and Jesus emerged from this unusually diverse environment. He became a student or follower of John the Baptist, a major Jewish religious figure who emphasized baptism as a way of cleansing sin and preparing for the coming kingdom of heaven. The idea was simple. God is coming, but before God arrives, human beings must cleanse themselves. They must wash away sin, begin again, and prepare themselves for the coming kingdom. Jesus spent time within this religious environment, but eventually developed his own following and began preaching his own message. His teachings attracted people, and he became known as a healer. Those who were sick came to him, and healing became connected to faith, belief, and spiritual transformation. Then, sometime around the years 30 to 33 CE, when Jesus was approximately in his mid-30s, he was crucified by the Romans. The precise reason for the crucifixion is not completely known, but crucifixion itself is revealing. The Romans did not normally use it for respected elites. It was one of the most humiliating and brutal forms of execution in the ancient world, generally associated with people such as bandits, pirates, slaves, rebels, and those who defied Roman authority. It was especially associated with people of low social status. The victim was fixed to a cross and left to die slowly. Death did not necessarily come from blood loss. The body gradually weakened. The muscles could no longer hold it upright. Breathing became increasingly difficult. Eventually the victim could suffocate. Death might take days. This is what happened to Jesus. From a strictly historical perspective, a basic outline can be established with greater confidence than many of the details surrounding his life. Jesus lived. He was born around 4 BCE. He was associated with Galilee. He had a connection to John the Baptist. He developed his own following. He was associated with healing. He was crucified by the Romans. Beyond this, certainty becomes much more difficult. Jesus is one of the most studied individuals in human history, yet remarkably little about him can be established beyond dispute. That is the historical Jesus. Then there is the biblical Jesus. The biblical Jesus is the Son of God. He exists in heaven and sees humanity suffering below. He feels compassion. He wants to redeem human beings from pain, sin, corruption, and separation from God. So he enters the world. He is born to a virgin mother named Mary. From an early age, he displays extraordinary spiritual intelligence. He gathers 12 apostles and preaches the coming kingdom of heaven. God is coming. Human beings must prepare. His religion emphasizes forgiveness, redemption, compassion, generosity, and mercy. He tells people not to judge others. Those without fault may cast the first stone. Human beings should not condemn each other because everyone carries mistakes, weakness, guilt, and sin. Jesus also becomes a social and religious revolutionary. The religious order of the time is deeply connected to priesthood, temple ritual, and animal sacrifice. Faith can be demonstrated through offerings. Religion becomes connected to tribute. Sacrifice becomes a way of maintaining a relationship with God. Jesus challenges this. Faith is not simply shown through killing an animal and giving an offering to the temple. Faith is shown through goodness, generosity, compassion, mercy, and the rejection of greed, corruption, and excessive attachment to material things. This places Jesus in conflict with religious authorities, especially those connected to the temple in Jerusalem. The biblical story continues with betrayal. Judas Iscariot, one of the apostles, betrays Jesus. Religious authorities accuse him and turn him over to the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate. In the biblical story, Pilate appears reluctant. He does not seem to understand what crime Jesus has committed and does not seem eager to execute him. But the priests insist. The crowd insists. Eventually Pilate agrees to the crucifixion. Jesus dies. Then he is resurrected. He appears again before his followers and tells them that he came to earth to redeem humanity and atone for human sin. His sacrifice has completed its purpose. God will come. The earth will be cleansed. The apostles must spread the message. They must spread the gospel. The word gospel means good news. Jesus also promises that he will return. There will be a second coming. He will return in glory. The forces of evil will be defeated. God's enemies will be destroyed. A new paradise will emerge. This is the biblical story. But it creates a major question. If Jesus is the Son of God, why must he die? How can the Son of God die? Why does God require crucifixion? Why does salvation depend on sacrifice? This question has troubled Christianity for almost 2,000 years, and there is no simple answer. The standard Christian explanation begins with Adam and Eve. God creates humanity. Adam and Eve are placed in the Garden of Eden. Paradise is available to them. They can live freely. There is only one major command: do not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. They disobey. They eat the fruit. This becomes original sin. God becomes angry. Adam and Eve are expelled from paradise. Humanity becomes separated from God. The human race continues to make mistakes. Sin accumulates. Corruption increases. The world becomes increasingly violent, selfish, and broken. God waits for humanity to admit its mistakes, but human beings refuse. They are stubborn. They are ignorant. They do not know how to ask for forgiveness. God may be merciful, but forgiveness must somehow be requested. Jesus, the Son of God, sees the conflict. He recognizes the impasse. Humanity cannot save itself. So Jesus enters the world and sacrifices himself. His death atones for the sins of humanity. Through his death, the separation between God and human beings can be overcome. God can forgive. Human beings can be released from guilt. But the story can also be understood psychologically. God is not only forgiving humanity. Humanity is being given a way to forgive itself. This leads to the problem of Achilles. The Iliad centers on Achilles, a great warrior who refuses to fight because Agamemnon has insulted him. His pride is wounded, so he withdraws. Yet he still wants to fight, and his anger and arrogance contribute to disaster. His friend Patroclus dies. When Patroclus dies, Achilles becomes even more furious. But beneath the fury lies guilt. Achilles is angry at himself. He cannot admit his own failure. He cannot forgive himself. So he directs the anger outward. He takes his rage out on Hector. He humiliates Hector's body. He becomes trapped inside his own grief. Then Priam arrives. Priam is Hector's father. He comes before the man who killed his son, and Priam forgives. That act releases Achilles. Achilles cannot free himself from guilt, but another person's mercy opens the door. This becomes a deeper Christian problem. What happens when human beings cannot forgive themselves? The answer is Jesus. Jesus forgives you. Do not remain trapped in guilt. Do not hate yourself forever. Do not believe that your mistakes permanently define you. You can become new. You can begin again. Jesus has atoned for the guilt. If you believe, you can be reborn. This is one of the deepest emotional powers of Christianity. Jesus makes it possible for human beings to imagine a new self. The sacrifice of Jesus also changes access to God. Before this, God is understood within Judaism. The relationship with God is connected to a specific covenant, a specific people, a specific sacred history, and a specific religious institution. Within the temple system, access becomes even more restricted. The high priest has unique access to the holiest space. Then Jesus dies. The Gospel of Mark describes a crucial image. Jesus gives a loud cry. He breathes his last. The curtain of the temple is torn in two from top to bottom. This curtain protects the inner sanctuary, the Holy of Holies, the sacred place associated with the presence of God. Only the high priest may enter. When the curtain tears, the barrier disappears. God is released. The divine is no longer confined behind priesthood, temple, and sacred architecture. Humanity now has access. Then something else happens. A Roman centurion is present. He is not Jewish. He sees Jesus die and declares that this man truly was the Son of God. In this reading, the first person to fully recognize Jesus is not one of the apostles. It is a Roman, a foreigner, a person outside the Jewish religious world. The meaning is universal. God is no longer restricted to one people. God is available to humanity. The sacrifice of Jesus opens the divine relationship to everyone. This becomes one of the foundations of Christianity. But serious problems remain. The first concerns original sin. The story of Adam and Eve is not as simple as later Christian theology suggests. Adam and Eve do disobey God. They eat from the tree. But the story also presents God as complicated. God tells them they will die if they eat, yet the consequences unfold differently. God also punishes humanity directly. Adam is condemned to labor. He must struggle to produce food. Eve is condemned to pain in childbirth. Humanity has already been punished. Then God expels Adam and Eve from paradise because they might eat from the tree of life and gain eternal life. This complicates the idea that a later sacrifice is necessary to pay an unresolved debt. Another problem is the anger of God. If God is perfect, eternal, and all-knowing, why is He angry at His children? Why must human beings ask before the Father forgives? Would a loving father remain eternally furious with children who are ignorant and weak? Is forgiveness the responsibility of the child or the responsibility of the parent? The story is emotionally powerful, but when examined closely, it becomes difficult. There is also a historical problem. The Bible repeatedly creates the impression that Jewish authorities were responsible for the death of Jesus. Across history, this idea has been used to justify anti-Semitism. Yet first-century Jewish society was not one unified religious bloc. It contained competing groups, including three major factions: the Sadducees, the Pharisees, and the Essenes. The Sadducees were closely associated with aristocracy, priesthood, and the temple. They represented a central religious authority. The Pharisees emphasized obedience to the law of God. They challenged the idea that temple sacrifice alone defined religious life. From this tradition eventually emerged the rabbis who shaped later Judaism. The Essenes emphasized approaching transformation. They expected a coming divine intervention and often stressed disciplined life, simplicity, community, peace, and separation from corruption. These groups disagreed deeply. They competed. They argued. They often disliked one another. But theological disagreement did not ordinarily mean handing religious opponents to Rome for execution. They still understood themselves as belonging to God's people. This makes the idea that Jewish religious authorities simply decided to kill Jesus historically questionable. Then there is Pontius Pilate. The biblical Pilate appears reluctant, almost sympathetic. He seems uncomfortable with the execution of Jesus. But the historical portrait considered here is different. Pilate appears as a violent Roman governor. Rome itself was often direct and brutal. Roman power did not hesitate to kill. Pilate also had serious conflict with the Jewish population. The first commandment prohibited false idols, but Rome represented the emperor through coins, standards, images, and imperial symbolism. The cult of Caesar could directly offend Jewish law. Pilate attempted to bring Roman imperial symbolism into Jerusalem, provoking resistance. There were moments when Jewish protesters were willing to die rather than accept religious humiliation. Pilate threatened violence. The protesters exposed their necks and effectively said, "Kill us." At times Pilate had to retreat because the resistance was too strong. This was not a gentle or politically sensitive ruler. The idea that Pilate deeply sympathized with Jesus while Jewish authorities forced his hand becomes difficult within this historical interpretation. From here, an alternative reconstruction begins. An important caveat must remain. This reconstruction is not presented as the conclusion of a specialist biblical scholar. It emerges from independent reading and historical interpretation. It can be challenged. It can be questioned. It is an argument. To understand it, the history of Judea and Jerusalem must first be reconstructed. King David stands near the beginning of the story. Around 1000 BCE, David becomes one of the major founders of Israelite political and religious identity. This period represents a high point of confidence. The kingdom is powerful, open, and generous. Then David dies. His son Solomon inherits the kingdom, but the political structure cannot remain united. The kingdom splits. There is a northern kingdom and there is Judah. Because the Levant stands at the center of major trade routes and imperial ambitions, both kingdoms become vulnerable. The northern kingdom is conquered by the Assyrians. Judah is conquered by the Babylonians. The elite are taken into exile in Babylon. During this experience, Judaism develops into a more structured form. Exile becomes central to identity. Scripture, law, memory, and covenant become increasingly important. Then the Persian Empire rises. The Persians allow Jewish communities to return. The biblical tradition is organized and written in a more developed form, with an important stage placed around the 5th century BCE. Then the Greeks arrive. Alexander the Great transforms the region. Greek culture spreads. After Alexander, the Ptolemaic world becomes especially important. Egypt is wealthy. Alexandria becomes a great center of learning. The Hebrew scriptures are translated into Greek. This translation becomes known as the Septuagint. This matters enormously because later Christianity develops largely in a Greek-speaking environment. Many Christians do not read Hebrew. The Greek Bible becomes foundational. Then comes the Seleucid period. Around 167 BCE, Antiochus desecrates the Jewish temple. A pig is sacrificed to Zeus. The act is experienced as an enormous religious insult. Jewish resistance follows. A long guerrilla struggle develops. Then Rome arrives. In 63 BCE, the Roman general Pompey conquers Jerusalem. The siege is violent. Large numbers are killed. Others are enslaved and dispersed across the empire. Jesus is born only decades later. By this point, Jewish society has experienced repeated conquest. Assyria, Babylon, Persia, Greece, Seleucid domination, Rome. This creates a theological crisis. If the Jewish people are chosen by God, why does this keep happening? Why are foreign empires victorious? Why is the temple violated? Why do outsiders kill God's people? Why does God permit humiliation? Two major explanations emerge. The first is punishment. The people have not been faithful enough. God has allowed foreign conquest because they disobeyed. They worshipped foreign idols. They violated the commandments. They failed to remain loyal. The empires become instruments of punishment. God is disciplining his people. The second explanation is apocalyptic eschatology. Eschatology concerns the end of history, the end of the world, the final transformation. Apocalypse means revelation or unveiling. Apocalyptic eschatology is the unveiling of how history will end. The suffering of the present is temporary. God is preparing to return. The empires will be destroyed. The enemies of God will be punished. A new divine order will emerge. This was a powerful idea in the world of Jesus. Many Jews expected the end times. Many prophets announced divine intervention. Jesus was not the only person preaching the coming kingdom. The claim that God was returning was widespread. Jesus emerged inside this broader apocalyptic environment. But Judea and Galilee were also connected to a much larger world. The Levant was a meeting place. Greek philosophy was present. Persian religion was present. Egyptian ideas were present. Roman philosophies were present. Mystery religions were present. Hindu and Buddhist traditions belonged to wider networks of exchange. Within this interpretation, Jesus absorbed and synthesized ideas from this religious environment into a new spiritual system. But that system was not yet Christianity. Christianity came later. The reconstructed religion of Jesus is identified here with Gnosticism. Greek philosophy offers Plato and the form of the good. For Plato, the good is the highest reality. From it come truth, beauty, justice, and reason. The visible world is not ultimate reality. It is an imperfect reflection, a shadow. Behind physical things exist deeper forms. The task of philosophy is to rise from appearance toward truth. The realm of forms becomes a kind of higher reality, almost a heaven. Mathematics becomes especially important because mathematical order appears closer to eternal truth than unstable physical objects. This idea is connected here to Egyptian sacred geometry. Geometry can be understood as the language and thought of the gods. Reality contains hidden structure. The physical world is not the final truth. Persian religion contributes another pattern through Zoroastrianism. The Creator is associated with the perfect God of light. A good world is created. Then an evil force corrupts it. Human beings become participants in a cosmic struggle. They can choose good or evil. History moves toward a final confrontation. A savior will emerge. A messianic figure. The forces of light will confront the forces of darkness. Good will triumph. Then resurrection and judgment will come. The dead will rise. Human beings will pass through a final test. The good will be purified. The evil will suffer. Paradise will follow. This structure strongly resembles later Christian eschatology. Hindu and Buddhist thought offer another pattern. There is a deeper reality. The visible world is not the ultimate truth. Human beings suffer because they are trapped in ignorance, attachment, false perception, and repeated cycles. In Hindu thought, Brahman represents the ultimate reality. The individual can move toward liberation. Moksha means release. Through right action, discipline, knowledge, and transformation, consciousness can escape the false or limited world and return toward the true reality. This resembles aspects of Plato. The physical world is not the final home. The human task is awakening. The ancient world also contains major philosophical schools: Stoicism, Cynicism, and Epicureanism. Cynicism becomes especially important in this reconstruction of Jesus. The cynic rejects attachment to material reality. Fine clothes do not matter. Status does not matter. Wealth does not matter. Social respectability does not matter. The individual should live simply. Beg if necessary. Reject false values. Refuse the illusion that material success equals truth. This resembles parts of the teaching associated with Jesus. There were also pagan rituals and mystery traditions. Some were associated with Dionysus. People gathered together. Altered states could be produced. Drugs or psychedelic substances could be used. Religious ecstasy was cultivated. The goal could be a feeling of unity, a dissolution of ordinary identity, a sense of interconnectedness. Many such rituals also challenged hierarchy. A slave and a rich person could participate in the same sacred experience. Ordinary social divisions could temporarily disappear. This wider world was filled with religious intensity. People were searching for truth, liberation, connection, a more peaceful reality, and a way beyond empire, hierarchy, suffering, and material corruption. Jesus emerged inside this climate. Within this reconstruction, he was a religious genius who synthesized many ideas into a new spiritual system. To understand that system, religion can be imagined as having several layers. There is a public layer, an inner layer, a secret layer. The public teaching is given to everyone. The inner teaching is given to disciples. The secret teaching is available only to the founder and the closest followers. These layers may speak differently, but they can remain connected as different levels of one system. In this reconstruction, Jesus publicly teaches compassion, mercy, forgiveness, and equality. The inner circle receives a more demanding teaching. The closest followers receive a deeper understanding of reality. The public Jesus teaches compassion, forgiveness, mercy, and egalitarianism. The Sermon on the Mount becomes central. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. At the public level, the message is simple. The poor have value. God does not measure worth through wealth. The suffering person is not abandoned. A poor person may lack food, status, and power, but God can still love that person. The public message offers hope. The inner teaching is more demanding. If you truly want to follow the path, attachment must be surrendered. If you are wealthy, give up wealth. If family and property prevent spiritual transformation, leave them behind. The disciple must become an example. The follower must live the teaching. A person cannot simply praise compassion. The person must embody it. Then comes the secret level. The Gospel of Thomas is not part of the standard Christian Bible. It was rediscovered in the 20th century among texts associated with Nag Hammadi in Egypt. It contains sayings attributed to Jesus. One saying declares that there is light within a person of light and that the light illuminates the world. If the light does not shine, there is darkness. This can be read at several levels. At the public level, it means, be good. Show compassion. Act generously. Bring light through moral behavior. At the inner level, the disciple must sacrifice attachment and become an example. At the secret level, it points toward a divine spark. This leads to Gnostic cosmology. At the beginning is the monad. The One. The perfect God. Eternal. Immutable. Complete. The monad is perfection. From perfection come other divine realities, described as pairs or emanations. Among them is Sophia. Wisdom. Knowledge. The divine world remains ordered. Perfection produces perfection. But then something goes wrong. Sophia attempts to create independently. She does not act through the proper relationship. She tries to imitate the creative power of the monad. She creates without the proper order. The result is a malformed being. A monster. Sophia is ashamed. She hides the creature in another reality. The creature does not know the true divine world. It is ignorant. It does not understand the monad. It believes itself to be God. It is lonely. So it creates. It creates the material world. It creates human beings. In this Gnostic interpretation, the Creator identified with Yahweh is not the highest God. He is a lower, ignorant creator. A distorted being. The world is broken because its creator is broken. This becomes an explanation for suffering. Why do bodies feel pain? Why do children suffer? Why do people become sick? Why do humans age? Why does death exist? Why would a perfect God create such a world? The answer within this reconstruction is that the perfect God did not create this material prison directly. A lower creator did. But the lower creator does not completely control humanity. Inside human beings remains something from the true divine reality. A spark. A light. A fragment of the monad. The body belongs to the broken world. The divine spark belongs to the true reality. Salvation, therefore, does not come through blind obedience to the material creator. Salvation comes through awakening. Through knowledge. Through Gnosis. You must remember who you are. You must discover the light. You must understand that the visible world is not ultimate reality. This is the secret teaching attributed here to Jesus. From this perspective, the meaning of poverty also changes. To succeed completely inside a corrupt material system, a person may have to become more like the system. The wealthy and powerful can become deeply invested in domination. They may master the game created by the lower world. The poor may remain less attached to that game. They may possess less material power, but also less investment in corruption. Therefore, blessed are the poor. The statement is not simply about economic suffering. It is about distance from the false reality. The person who dominates a monstrous world may become monstrous. The person who remains outside the system may remain closer to the divine spark. Another saying from the Gospel of Thomas becomes central. When the two become one. When the inside becomes like the outside. When the outside becomes like the inside. When the above becomes like the below. When male and female become one. Then the kingdom can be entered. The false world creates categories. Rich and poor. Male and female. Ruler and subject. Priest and ordinary believer. Jew and Gentile. Master and slave. The material system divides. The deeper truth is unity. Human beings are interconnected. The same divine spark exists within them. Compassion, therefore, becomes more than moral kindness. It becomes recognition. You show mercy because the person before you is not ultimately separate from you. You reject hatred because the divisions of the world are not the final truth. You seek unity because unity reflects the deeper reality. The saying also speaks of replacing the ordinary eye. Human beings possess eyes, but what they see may be false. The physical eye sees appearance. The spiritual eye sees truth. You must learn to see with the soul. With the divine spark. Then the false world becomes visible as false. Within this reconstruction, Jesus does not die because God requires blood payment for original sin. Death itself is not the ultimate disaster. The material world is already a prison. Death may become a return to the deeper reality. But the death of Jesus has another function. It awakens attention. The crucifixion is so violent, so public, and so tragic that people cannot ignore it. The Romans intend to destroy Jesus. Instead, the execution makes him unforgettable. People ask questions. Who was he? Why was he killed? What did he teach? Why did Rome fear him? The death captures human attention. By focusing on Jesus, people focus on the teachings. By focusing on the teachings, they may begin a process of self-discovery. Through that process, the deeper message can emerge. Compassion, mercy, generosity, rejection of false material values, recognition of the divine spark, awakening, the escape from false reality. Jesus becomes more powerful in memory than he was in life. At some point, Jesus develops his understanding of the world and believes in the message strongly enough to spread it. If a religious teacher wants influence, Jerusalem matters. Jerusalem is the religious center. But Jerusalem is dangerous. The Romans are present. Religious authorities are present. Competing prophetic groups are present. Jesus does not have a powerful political faction protecting him. The Romans are suspicious of prophets. Apocalyptic preaching can become rebellion. If a person says God is returning, the political implication may be that Rome is doomed. A coming kingdom of heaven can sound like a challenge to the empire. Jesus becomes visible. The Romans arrest him. They crucify him. The execution is intended as a warning. But it produces the opposite effect. Imagine a king whom everyone hates. 3 prophets appear. The first prophet says the king is illegitimate. The second says the king is a murderer. The third says the king steals from the army. The people do not know which prophet is telling the truth. Then the king executes one of them. Immediately the dead prophet gains credibility. Why did the king kill him? What did he know? Why was he dangerous? The execution becomes evidence in the public imagination. The same mechanism transforms Jesus. Rome kills him. Therefore people become more interested. The martyr becomes larger than the teacher. The execution spreads the message. This is especially powerful inside a society already expecting the end times. People already believe the Messiah may be near. Then Rome crucifies a prophet. The death becomes charged with meaning. Gnosticism becomes attractive because it offers an explanation for suffering. Why does the world hurt? Because the world is broken. Why are powerful people often corrupt? Because material power belongs to a false order. Why do human beings still feel beauty, love, truth, and transcendence? Because a divine spark remains inside them. Why should people be compassionate? Because beneath social divisions, humanity is interconnected. Why should people reject excessive attachment to wealth? Because attachment binds consciousness to the material prison. Why does knowledge matter? Because awakening is liberation. This reconstructed Jesus is radically different from the Jesus of later Christianity. The Gnostic Jesus teaches that the light is within you. Later Christianity teaches that salvation comes through belief in Jesus. The Gnostic Jesus directs attention toward awakening. Later Christianity directs attention toward Christ as Redeemer. The Gnostic Jesus teaches discovery. Later Christianity teaches faith in the person of Jesus. The Gnostic Jesus teaches that the divine spark can liberate the individual from a false world. Later Christianity teaches that Jesus died to atone for human sin and will return to save the world. These are not minor differences. They are different religious systems. And this creates the central question. How did the religion of Jesus become the religion about Jesus? How did a teaching centered on the divine spark become a religion centered on redemption through Christ? How did inner awakening become institutional belief? How did a teacher become an object of worship? How did a movement become a church? The answer leads to Paul. A sharp distinction emerges between Jesus and Christianity. Jesus is not presented here as the true founder of Christianity. Paul is. Christianity is the religion about Jesus, but it is not necessarily the religion Jesus himself taught. The teacher becomes the Redeemer. The prophet becomes the Son of God. The execution becomes atonement. The memory becomes doctrine. The movement becomes Christianity. The inner divine spark begins to disappear behind the institution built in the name of Jesus. This is the transition. From Jesus to Paul. From teaching to doctrine. From awakening to belief. From the religion of Jesus to the religion about Jesus.